Yo, what up? This your boy Tim, aka T.O. Speaks.
And it's your girl Yammy, aka Yams Be Saying, and you are now tuned into
Love and Theology.
I know I've questioned many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in real love, your love.
For every mom who ever missed a meal so they would have enough to let their babies eat.
Yo, what up? We're so glad that y'all decided to join us again for another episode, podcast of Love and Theology. What episode are we on now? I haven't lost count. We just been rolling.
I feel like 20 or 21. I feel like we're in the double digits for sure, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know, right? So, what's one good thing that happened for you last week?
Actually, I have a lot. I got an opportunity to go kick it with my girlfriends on a wine date in a wine bungalow, and we had great time people watching, connecting with other people, all that stuff. And beyond that, it's the second week, or now I think we're in the third week of school, and I am ahead. And I am like 2 papers written, 1.5 edited on my 3rd book. And I am so happy right now because I just feel like February, March, April, May is going to be super busy and I won't have to worry about school. So
How many papers you got to write this semester?
a lot. And I think there's like 4 books. So I'm like 4 books for one class.
So you got to write a paper each?
Yeah, for one class and then 3 for another.
Wow. And you already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
That's good.
What about you?
Let's see. Really, just I don't know. I don't really know if I have anything
Positive?
positive. I mean, not negative either. Just kind of feel like everything been running kind of like the same. You know what I mean? So,
Well, you had a good opportunity this week.
what was that?
I mean, am I allowed to talk about it with the football?
I mean, it hadn't came. I mean, I had an interview for that. I mean, but it hasn't came. I mean, other than that, just something good happened for me this week. Was I got to see the week? I guess that's really.
Well, I had a lot of good things.
That's
so.
good. I'm glad somebody did. I didn't have any bad things. I didn't just have anything that was out of the ordinary. You know what I mean? So.
Okay. Well, how are you doing in school?
I'm doing good in school right now. I'm doing good. I mean, just 2nd week of school. I'm doing good. You know me, man. I'm me. So I'm staying on top. I'm staying on top of everything this time, though. So getting everything done.
And for that, we give God praise.
Right.
We have another semester like last one.
It was a tough semester.
I mean, but okay.
But it wasn't because the schoolwork was hard. Because everything else that was going on was hard. So made it hard.
Tomato.
So.
But today, so I guess what we said we would do, because we had said that we were going to talk about church, but that seems to be getting prolonged for this conversation too. We are going to be focusing on the calling.
The calling,
right?
Yes.
So hopefully this will kind of give people perspective on what things kind of help us determine what our calling is, and we'll get conversations with not just only us, but other people. Hopefully. Let's see. They're not scheduled yet. But
Gonna
I mean,
try
if
to
you
make
want
it
to be on the episode or whatever, let us know. Anyway, so the calling. What do you think the calling is? I guess.
I would say that how we put it in church. The calling is when you feel this calling on your life to pretty much serve God in some kind of way, right?
You can't define a word with the definition, with the word.
I know that. I wasn't trying to define it. I was just saying what it is. You asked me
Okay.
say what it is. Calling is, I guess, when you feel this strong urge to do something. It's being led by God, right? God is talking to you. God is keeping you up at night. First thing you think about is this task that you need to do. When you wake up, the last thing you think about is this task that you need to do. And I feel like that's for me, that's how I determined the calling on my life, right? That's how I realized I had a call on my life. So I would say a calling is basically something that you feel like you got to do that's being led by God. It's being ushered in by God into your life. What about you?
I guess I have a similar but different perspective on it, right? So, like, I've been reading a lot, and some of the books that I've been reading have all to do with destiny. So, I've been listening on an audiobook to the 1619 Project. Candace Mimbo, who actually follows me on IG, first of all. Okay, look her up. She's amazing. She has a book called The Red Lip Theology that just came out. Finished that in like 3 days. Amazing. I have been listening to or reading books for my class. One is called The Womanist Midrash, and then another one called Black Liberation Theology. And all of them have like kind of a neutralized premise in the sense that they talk about kind of black people, and maybe specifically women within the context of ministry. But also what they do too in except for the 1619 Project, but all of them ultimately talk about what led them to writing or to fulfilling this particular writing calling kind of thing, right? And it's always something, it's not one dimensional, it's multi-dimensional. So a series of things that kind of came together that eventually led to a thing. So like, even if we talk about Candace Bimbo, it feels like her mom had been grooming her to be purposeful with her gifts, but she didn't always know that it would land in a book deal, or being a womanist who, you know, had such a great platform. She understands it now, and she's using it in that capacity. So for me, when I think about calling, I don't know if I completely have a grasp of what that looks like for me in this moment, but I think that there are things that I'm gifted in that are kind of merging together specifically in this season. Because, like, even with us, I'll tell you something. Like, tomorrow at the time that this episode is up, we would have already done it. But we're doing a photo shoot. Mm-hmm. But the photo shoot came at the heels of a request that our pastors made to us. And it's almost like, it's like they put it out, they spoke it into life for us. And then, or the thing that they needed to do, and made a request, right? And it's like things started lining up according to their request.
Right.
Every obstacle that we would have then put up, well, we don't have this, or we can't, whatever, is now like gone, right? Because these things are lining up. I think that's because this thing that we're getting ready to do is completely assigned or is a part of our ultimate calling. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the things that we will be using or reflecting on, you know, later on to be like, oh, that was the moment. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that it's multi-layered. It's because for me, it's not something that I think about all the time, mm-hmm. but it is something that is embedded in me in a way that it keeps coming up.
Okay. I mean, that's a good example. I like the way you pretty much brought it home. I believe everybody's calling would be probably different, and they would experience it in a different way. And I think that was good how you kind of broke it down. You know what I mean? So.
The other thing that I think that I've been battling with regards to the whole calling thing is the suppression of it. I think I've been very candid on any of my podcast episodes in the sense that I've always had a light on me in some kind of way, you know right. what I'm saying? And having grown up like that, you create an aversion to it, you know what I'm saying? Because or some people, my mom, I like to tell the story about my mom. My mom likes to do this thing where she was like, I like when people are looking at me. I walk into a room, and when they're looking at me, I'm okay with it.
She owns the room. She goes into
and that is her judge. And my mom is a very beautiful and, you know, confident woman. It's not that I lack confidence, but I would rather go into a room and sit in the bed.
You kind of like dim your light down, kind of.
I do a lot, and and the reason why is because And it's not a value. It's not a valid reason. But the reason why is because it's easier, or I would think that it's easier. But the problem is, and I was listening to a sermon at TD Jakes, or a snippet of a sermon. The problem with that is that it would cause me to be mediocre, and I'm not mediocre.
And then, too, one thing about that, I believe, too, no matter how much you deem you like, right? I believe that if God has use of you, He's just gonna keep coming back around, circling back around to you. You're gonna keep circling back around.
I agree.
At some point, you're gonna have to walk into it, regardless, man.
There are. I think there are some people that God would allow. Okay, whatever.
Right.
But I also think that there are some people that He would be like, okay, no matter
Right.
what. Like almost like I never remember if it's Elijah or Elisha, but one of them who was in the cave and was like, "Ain't nobody out here," For me, after he was chased off by Jezebel, ain't nobody out here to. It sounded like our pastors out here. Ain't nobody out here to talk to about this. They're after me. They're trying to kill me. And God was like, yo, he's sitting in the cave crying, bellowing to God about this and asking God to basically take his life. And he's like, yeah. God is like, yeah, no. Like I have 7
use of you.
Yeah, I have a lot of people on the other side that need what you have. So, cry.
Right.
I've heard your petition. Wipe your tear and get to going.
You gotta go. You gotta go.
You know what I'm saying?
I ordained this from your birth. You have to do this,
and it's
right?
not about the other component of it is it's not about you.
Right, it's not
You know
about you,
it's
right.
not just about you.
The calling oftentimes isn't for you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: how do you couple in the calling with the anointing? Right.
You answer that because I don't know.
Well, I think the calling is calling. I'm gonna tell you something that I also was thinking about. Like they say, many are called, but few are chosen.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that means? Like, I think we hear that and we throw that out there, and I think what happens is most people soak that in when preachers say it. They be like, "I'm the chosen one," right? So how do you know what's the difference between the calling? Many are called, but few are chosen.
I think it goes back to what I was saying about God being not okay. There's some people. I've been using this phrase for a couple years that says, "I don't want to die empty." But there are some people who have
Right.
been devoid
Lots of
of their gifting, or never completely fully used their gifting. I guess to put it in the simplest form, I would maybe the parable of the 10th comes to mind, of the 3 people who, like, their masters gave them a 10th of something. Or a talent. They gave him a talent, and 2 multiplied their talent, and 1 didn't. I think in that if I'm thinking it out right now, within that construct, I feel like those 2 were therefore chosen.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, it's funny because even when I was thinking what you're saying, I was thinking about this when we came up with this topic all day yesterday. And it was when I was driving, it finally hit me. You know what I mean? What it is, and it basically was that it was like God was telling me that many are called, all are called in a sense, but the chosen ones are the one that make a decision to put back their flesh to walk into the calling. That's the chosen one.
Yeah.
When you chose the chosen one are the one who's gonna do the work.
Yeah.
Who's going to put their feelings aside, who's going to walk into their calling. Those are the ones chosen. Everybody's called. Everybody at some point feel like God has something on their life, right? Mm-hmm. But the chosen ones are the ones that are going to walk into it. That's going to beat back their flesh. That's going to do everything they can to make sure that this call comes to fruition.
And it doesn't mean that, to your point, I don't think that means that also they won't have any pitfalls, right? There won't be moments of discouragement. There won't be moments of setbacks or whatever.
Right.
But for like I said, there's some of us, even in those, even in my quest to be a dimmer light version of myself, there's some things I'm inevitably drawn to regardless.
Because also, yes, exactly. Because one thing about the calling is uncomfortable, man.
Yeah, it is
The calling is uncomfortable. Think about, take Martin Luther King, for example, or any of Rosa Parks or Aunt Polly, any of those people, right?
Who?
Aunt Polly, probably. But Aunt Polly was she was a enslaved person who pretty much helped bring people to the Underground Railroad. She was known for carrying a butcher knife and throwing boiling hot water on people.
Okay.
on the slave catchers killing them. But anyway, I'm saying those people had a calling. That was uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Had to be uncomfortable. But they decided, the called ones, to still go through it, even though it was uncomfortable. So I think those were the chosen ones.
Actually, when you even using your example, when you think about that, Harriet Tubman, that is indeed a calling.
Right.
Like you have, it's something that is only God ordained. And I guess I've never really looked at it from that perspective, right? I think of her and I think, oh, I'm grateful that she did it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But what would possess you to do something completely contrary to culture?
Right. Exactly.
It would be nothing but the calling.
Right. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Even Jesus, everything that he did was completely
contrary to the current culture.
Yep. It was. So.
And I think we talked about that with the women component, but also just in general, who he used to fraternize with.
Right.
You know, the tax collectors and the
unlikely of society.
Yeah, the unlikable of society.
Right.
Now that's a very good perspective.
So and that's what I believe. I believe oftentimes too, you know, I believe we mix up the calling with the anointing as well, right?
Okay.
I think that's a whole nother subject, but you know, a lot of people think like with anointing, like, oh, you called and you anointed for the call, right? I go back to and I think about even when you think about David comparing when he anointed his head with oil, then you see what the oil does for sheep, right? Mm-hmm. The anointing, the oil basically protects the sheep from flies to beating their head up against the wall. So when David was anointed, think about it. It wasn't until years later that he walked into his calling, right? The anointing was to protect him. The anointing is protection, to cover him until he got to his calling.
Right.
That's all it was, the anointing. So now I think in modern times we often say that these anointing because he can sing. No, that's a gift. I can imitate your gift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The anointing and the gift are two different things.
They're very separate.
They're very separate. They say this person is a gifted preacher. He's anointed. Is he?
I think too.
Mean?
We use those terminologies interchangeably because we were never given the correct definition for them.
Right.
And to your point, to be anointed is not. It works in conjunction. It works with the gift,
right.
But it's not the gift.
It's not the gift.
It's the thing that it's the layer that protects you.
Yep, that protects you and your gift
as you operating inside of your gift.
Imagine a kid that's anointed at birth, guys. I believe God anoints kids at birth. He knows what he's going to use, right? But that kid doesn't walk into his calling,
right,
until he's 30, 40, 20 years
right.
old. So that whole time when he's anointed, God protected that kid throughout life. So the enemy won't come to the kid and cause the kid to walk away from his calling and to bump his head up against the wall and kill himself, basically like sheep. You see what I'm saying?
So to put it in more layman's terms, the anointing would be that voice, that gnawing in your voice, in your head when you're among your or more susceptible to peer pressure, that is saying, "Nah, don't go that route. Don't do that. Don't do that in that season." And like you later find out that if you would have gotten in the car with your friends, you would have been arrested, or you would have been, dead or something like that. The anointing is a covering shield, a covering layer that is, and it's not that this is the actual definition. I guess we'll put the definition.
No, but I mean, you're giving it just application and practicality.
Yeah. The practicality of it is that the anointing is a shield of protection.
Right.
And to what Tim was saying, when you think about what it was typically how it was used in Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I should not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, lead me beside still waters, restores my soul. He guides me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. What is it? Yea, thou walk the valley of the shadow of death, I should not fear no evil, for thou art with me. That rod and that staff, they come from me. That those prepare a table before the presence of my enemies has anointed that has anointed. Thank you.
Yeah, has anointed
my head with oil.
My cup overflows.
Yeah. Anointed. Before we even get to the point of the conversation of the anointing in Psalms 23, it talks about the shadow of death.
Right. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
I should not fear no evil, for thou art with me. That rod and that staff, they come from me.
All those things, even rod and staff, he's putting his what they do in daily life. The shepherd with sheep has a rod and a staff. They both use those to guide the sheep. Okay, go ahead.
And as added protection, so that if a wolf or something would come, that rod and that staff would be. It was twofold, right? It would be able to knock away the wolf, but also when the sheep was going astray, it was able to correct and pull back the sheep.
Right.
So, yeah, that's good.
So he was leading up to, like, first he talked about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Then he goes, we skip to the anointing, right?
Yeah.
He anoints my head. He protects me. He protects me as I would go through those things. That protection, that anointing is there.
Anoints my head, surely my cup will overflow.
Right.
But it's a protective layer, and like Tim was saying,
Well, explain it in the way what happened with the sheep. Like why they anointed the head, the sheep head with oil. They pour oil all over the sheep.
that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So it was that because it tended to get hot. So the oil was a cooling mechanism to keep the sheep from getting hot, right? What else was the
It
tool?
also, cause one thing that insects would go inside the ear,
that's right.
and they pretty much lay eggs inside the ear, and then they would cause the sheep to go crazy, right?
So protecting them from disease,
right.
infirmity. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about the anointing, it didn't cover every single thing, right? There was still some opportunities if for the sheep to be susceptible, or the sheep, right?
Man, but it's just
to be susceptible to it. But go ahead.
It's so good. Like even with that, right? With the bugs going inside the sheep, right? It causes the sheep to. It irritate the sheep so much that they'll begin to bang their head up against the wall. The anointing keeps you from losing your mind, right?
Right.
The anointing keeps you from losing your mind through a world that's pretty much just chaos. So the anointing, God is going to keep you from losing your mind.
But even because you said it caused it even if there was room for it to come inside, because sometimes not to say that the anointing doesn't cover a multitude of things,
right?
But let's say it needs to be replenished in some way.
Right.
And even if you do lose your head, there's a mechanism, there's a tool in place to get you, to pull you back from that situation, if that makes sense.
And let me ask you this. Do you think the anointing is one time, or do you think God continues to anoint you?
I know. I mean, to me, I feel like it gets dressed up every single time in different ways.
I think so too. Yeah.
If I'm looking at it in practical terms, like when we were where we were previously, we were anointed for that particular season,
right.
and that covered us in the midst of what we were going through during that season. Not just going through, but what we were growing through in that season. This anointing that we have been anointed with now is completely different than last season's anointing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's completely different than last season, and I can't really say practically where in the Bible it shows that one person getting anointed multiple times. To be honest with you, the only example that I really remember about with the sheep, they would have to get anointed all over again.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh my God!
It's not one time. They have to keep pouring the oil. The oil has to keep getting refreshed all the time. So.
Because water, they get wet. Something goes, it drowns them out in some kind of way. The winter, the seasons.
And check this out. Even with us as sheep, because we often compare it to sheep, right? That needs to shepherd God, the godless, right? Even as sheep, right? We have to constantly get anointed. Because first of all, sheep are dumb animals, right?
Yeah.
They are dumb animals. We are human beings that would do dumb things, right? Honestly, we are human beings that do dumb stuff,
that's
right?
why the comparison was there.
Right, exactly.
That's how God be shaking. He know what he doing. The inspiration, the inspirers of the Bible that were inspired by God. He was like, let me tell you real quick. Tell them real quick that they're dumb, but don't let them know that. Don't let them realize that I'm calling them dumb.
A sheep would literally drown itself, man. A sheep would go on water, get itself caught in water, and die. That's why you gotta have.
That's why I got to have a shepherd.
That's why you gotta have a shepherd.
My God.
Just like us, we would literally go out in this world, do dumb stuff to get ourselves hurt, but we have a shepherd that keep pulling us back every single time.
God told the writer of the text to be like, let them know that I'm calling them dumb, but don't make it so simplistic and so beautiful that they don't even realize I am literally calling them.
Can you imagine David though, when David was just sitting here putting pen to parchment, right, writing this text, right, getting ready to thinking that he's a shepherd, right? He's seeing himself as a
He was
sheep.
like, I am not a shepherd. I am not the shepherd in this case. I am indeed the
A
sheep.
right? Can you imagine? Like, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to write this? Fine. And I guess too, that's the difference between being anointed and not, right? Because the gift is in the writing, but the anointing covers you.
Yep.
So that you might not be so much in your feelings, so that you not is to the point where you won't be willing to do what God is doing. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, David came to the realization that God Himself was calling him, a sheep. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He was calling me dumb. In his ego, he might have not written that word out for other people to be bear witness to it, but the anointing covered him in a way that. Protected him in a way that he wasn't so caught up in his ego to not completely fulfill the will of God.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. The anointing humbles you.
The anointing keeps you humble.
Right. So, so back to the calling. So, I love it. I love the way you gave your definition with the books. I think that covers a multitude of people that's struggling with the calling, and also I think anointing, calling, and purpose all couples in with this conversation. Like, what do you think? How do you think the anointing, the calling, and purpose? How do you think they work together?
I know I've questioned many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in real love, your love. Yeah.
For every mom who ever missed a meal so they would have enough to let their babies eat. Fathers who grind every day to provide more than good advice. Charlie Sheen, take it, everything you gotta take to bring the bacon home and put it on the table. You are not forgotten, legacies are made in our darkest hours. God is watching, keep your faith. Don't bend, don't fold, there's a lyric I quote. Tell me trouble don't last always. There's a Christ I know who revives the soul of the one who lose their way. Pursue the one who promised us a peace of mind. I tried to fly high on my choice of vice, but then I found Christ was the road to life.
Many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in a real love. I know I've questioned many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in a real love, your love.
For every mom who ever missed a meal so they would have enough to let their babies eat. Fathers who grind every day to provide more than good advice. Charlie Sheen, take it, everything you gotta take to bring the bacon home and put it on the table. You are not forgotten, legacies are made in our darkest hours. God is watching, keep your faith. Don't bend, don't fold, there's a lyric I quote. Tell me trouble don't last always. There's a Christ I know who revives the soul of the one who lose their way. Pursue the one who promised us a peace of mind. I tried to fly high on my choice of vice, but then I found Christ was the road to life.
Many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in a